Hello and welcome to Baking on a Budget. Now in this video what I'm going to be making is these absolutely delicious individual steak and ale pies. A really tasty and filling pie. Now as usual I have all of the ingredients over here and I'm going to run through exactly what I've got and how much it all cost. And for the filling for this we have got 300 grams of stewing steak. Now that comes to £2.78. I got this from Aldi, 700 grams of it for £6.49, which I thought was quite reasonable. And obviously we'll use the rest of it in a stew or casserole or something like that. We have one onion at 9p. We have one stick of celery at 6p. We have a beef stock cube, which I'll put into about 500ml of water. That is 12p. We have 250ml of ale, and again this was just a cheap ale that I picked up, and that is 75p for the 250ml of it. Black pepper, we have about 2p worth of black pepper, and we have 2 teaspoons of corn flour. Now for the pastry we have 250 grams of plain flour, we have 60 grams of unsalted butter, 60 grams of lard, and a little cold water and a pinch of salt. So this whole recipe comes to £4.58, and we're going to get 4 deep filled steak and ale pies out of that, individual steak and ale pies, making each pie £1.14 a piece. The first thing we want to do is prepare this beef. As I say, it's already diced, but it's still a little bit large for a pie filling, so I'm just going to chop those up a little further and get them ready for the pan. As I say, this beef was about the cheapest I could find. It isn't the cheapest stuff in the world to buy, but this was quite reasonable, I thought. As I say, from Aldi, buying the larger quantity makes it cheaper, obviously. And there's plenty of this to have maybe a goulash through the week. Maybe I'll make a goulash. Okay, and what I want to do with this beef is just brown it first. So I've got a pan on a hob. I've got all of these pieces prepared here, and I'm just going to whack them in the pan and just fry them up until they are browned. And whilst that's happening, we shall prep the veg. And as I say, the veg for this, I'm just putting an onion in, and I'll put some celery in there as well. And we just want to chop these to suit, really. I mean, this will be fairly finely chopped, not too fine, but and we can chop it that way. And the same with the celery, we'll just chop this up again fairly finely, you know. Okay, and that's the meat browned off nicely. Into the pan, we are now going to put the onions and celery, and we just want those to soften up. Now whilst that's happening, I'm going to put this ale in a small pan, and I'm just going to boil that off, and that will get all of the gas, etc. out of the ale. Alrighty, so the ale has boiled, and that is going to be just fine. The onions and the celery looking good. So I'm going to put the beef back in there, and to that, just give that a quick stir. And now to that I'm adding the stock cube, which is in 500ml of boiling water. I'll just make sure that's properly dissolved in the bottom of there first. Okay, so now we want to just add the stock and check, see if that's too hot. No, that's fine. And we'll put the ale in there as well. That smells wonderful already. Now there's quite a lot of liquid in there, and I will take some of this out before it goes into the pies. This is because we're going to leave this to simmer for about an hour and a half. We want this meat to be really tender, just fall apart in the mouth type of thing. And that will take a little while. So I'm going to add the pepper to that, add a good crack of pepper to it. And then we can cover that. And as I say, we want to leave that for about an hour and a half, something like that. I'll check it after an hour 15 and see how the meat's doing. Now in the meantime, we can make the pastry for these. And to make the pastry, we have got the 250 grams of plain flour, to which I will add a pinch of salt, and then we'll just put the fats in there and rub them in. Again, this is the same sort of short crust pastry I've made many times, and there is indeed a video up there which will show exactly how this is done. But essentially it's just rub the fats into the flour and the flour into the fats until we end up with a nice smooth sort of breadcrumb mix. Okay, that's looking good. Now we want to put some cold water in here. It's about 60 ml. I'll just put a little in first and see how this comes together. That will probably be sufficient there, I think. Let's bring this together, get it all off the side of the bowl, and then we shall get that in the fridge. And as I say, there should be just enough here for the 4 pies. I'm going to put that in some cling film, stick it in the fridge for about half an hour. Okay, so we're about an hour and a quarter into the boiling of the beef. So I'm just going to start preparing the cases for this. Again, this pastry has been in the fridge, it's nice and chilled, and I'm going to roll that out and make the pie cases. Flour on the pin, and then we just want to roll this out. I'm going to put them in these 5-inch individual pie trays or dishes, and this plate cuts about the right size for that. So I'm going to cut a couple of these off. So we want 4 of them and then 4 lids. Now with this, I'm making the lids just by putting that on top of the pastry and cutting around it, but I've only got enough for 3. I've got that little bit left. So what I'm going to do is I'll line these tins first, and hopefully any offcuts will make the last lid. Looking good. Okay, so that's the cases all prepared, and there was indeed just enough for the lids. So what I'm going to do with these is pop them in the fridge for a little while, and then we'll get back to the beef. Alrighty, so the beef has had about an hour and a half on there. It's very tender at this point. Smells absolutely delicious, and what I'm going to do is just strain some of the liquid off this. This will make a fantastic gravy, and there's just too much of it in the pan to put in the pies, so I'll strain about half of that off, and then we'll thicken it up with the corn flour. Now here I have a teaspoon of corn flour or cornstarch just dissolved in a little cold water, and I'll pour that in, give it a stir around, and that will help to thicken this up. Yes, that's already coming together then. Might need a touch more, maybe another half teaspoon. Okay, that has come together very nicely. The sauce has thickened up, or the gravy has thickened up very nicely. So now what I'm going to do, I've got the oven on, heating the oven up, and I'm just going to leave that to cool for a little while before we actually put this whole thing together. Okay, at this point, the filling is cooled nicely. That's looking really nice. The oven is up to temperature, so we are going to fill these up. And I'll just distribute this equally over the 4 pies. Now that's a lot of steak in each one of these pies, I've got to say. And we'll just get that last drop in there. And I think I might have overdone it with that one. I'll maybe stick a little bit more in there. That's looking about even. So next thing we want to do is just seal them up. I'm using an egg. I'm going to use an egg wash on this. I do believe I neglected to put the price of the egg in the original recipe. Do forgive me. But this won't use all of the egg anyhow. And with the rest of that egg, I'll maybe scramble it. Have a little bit of scrambled egg on toast. Alright, they are looking good. Now, I'm just going to crimp these round the sides, and I'll do that as ever with this fork. Very good, and the last thing again is just to give them a good egg wash on top, and they'll come out nice and browned in the oven. Good. Now they're going to go into an oven at 180 degrees centigrade. They're going to go in the centre of the oven, and they're going to stay in there for about 25 minutes. Here they go. Okay, and just over 25 minutes later, look at this pie. This looks absolutely beautiful. They smell fantastic as well, by the way. I'm going to let these cool just a little bit, and then we'll cut one in half, take a look inside, and we'll have a taste of it. Okay, now look at that. That is one delicious individual steak and ale pie. I've just weighed this actually, and this pie weighs 200 grams, so it is a substantial pie. This is just for comparison purposes, you see. If you were to buy a steak and ale pie from a shop, what weight would it be? This is crammed full of that beautiful steak, and it smells beautiful with that thick gravy and ale. That's absolutely marvellous. But look at that. That is really deep filled and beautiful. That is absolutely marvellous. That's practically a meal in itself. And as I say, the cost of this pie, £1.14. The steak is lovely and tender, melts in the mouth. The pastry is nice and short and crisp, just the way I like it. That is one delicious steak and ale pie. And also with this recipe, if you wanted to make one large plate pie, it'd be about the same sort of ingredients. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to see more delicious recipes like this, always on a budget, always very simple to prepare, please do consider subscribing to the channel. In the meantime, I'm going to eat the rest of this pie, and I thank you very much for watching.